Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new video. Yes, the Strait of Hormuz is still causing global concerns, and the specific topic of oil transport, we've already discussed that in our last video. And I would like to now introduce to you some 3 tanker stocks, to be precise, that are involved with the topic of LNG transport. Because LNG is also a crucial raw material that must pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and it's especially vital for Asia. We'll look at that in the graphic shortly. But before we begin, of course, the risk disclaimer: everything I say does not constitute a buy or sell recommendation, nor is it financial advice, but merely my own opinion. So let's dive in and take a look at the situation of the Strait of Hormuz. I believe that's more or less known to everyone. Yes, we know, okay, the Strait of Hormuz is very important for oil transport. We can see here 30% of the world's globally transported oil by sea passes through this strait, and it is currently closed. And the longer it remains closed, the greater the problem becomes for the markets, for the global markets regarding oil, but also for LNG. And we are seeing this in naturally rising oil and gas prices, and above all, of course, in the increased freight rates. For freight rates have increased not only for crude oil, but also for LNG, and quite remarkably within a relatively short period of time, from 42,000 US dollars on February 25th to now almost 300,000 US dollars per day. This is already an enormous increase, and it naturally leads to these significant concerns in the stock markets, which is why I believe that we will still, even now in the coming week, or indeed this very current week, experience further pressure on the stock markets. But which stocks actually benefit? It's quite clear that these tanker, or rather these shipping company stocks, are the ones. And I've brought 3 examples for you today. And the first one that I'd like to show you is Flex LNG. And Flex LNG is also one of the largest, or rather, yes, the largest LNG shipping companies that I've found on the stock market, at least. And they own 13 ships, and the stock looks very, very exciting. And here we can see that in the chart on TradingView, in the weekly chart. And here we can clearly observe this breakout emerging from this consolidation phase, accompanied by a very, very strong buying volume. What this means is we're seeing that while LNG freight rates have experienced a significant price surge over the past few days, the stock itself has only reacted quite moderately so far. This means, compared to the tanker stocks I showed you in the last video, they've already performed better. A lot has already been priced in, but there's still room for growth or upside for these shares. But here, I think we're still a little bit earlier in the process, and the stock is just about to break out. And that is from a technical chart perspective. Excellent. This means I definitely see the next price target here moving towards $38. That's also about 25%. And furthermore, I believe that if freight rates stay tight or remain at a high level, or to put it another way, if we see no easing regarding the Strait of Hormuz, then this stock will also quite soon hit new all-time highs. Let's look at it fundamentally. Yes, valuation is one of the most important factors. We see that tanker stocks have already reached quite a high valuation. However, that's not quite the case for Flex LNG. If we consider its history, we are certainly in a slightly elevated range, but we are still not at the highest point within the last few years. Yes, the price here was 5.5 back then in the year 2023. Currently, we are at 4.7. And we also shouldn't forget that when the freight rates are so high, more money is being earned. That means I think we can easily, in a relatively short period of time, see a doubling of the stock. Well, so 100% gain within just a few weeks is definitely quite possible for this particular stock in an optimistic scenario that the confrontation in Iran will continue to persist, which is how things currently appear. It is, I believe, also a much more complex issue than for a quick solution to be found here. But you never know. Essentially, anything could happen. But nevertheless, we must adjust to what is currently taking place. And I believe Flex LNG is a very, very exciting stock. If we also consider the fundamental data, we have here a very, very stable company. And we also see this in the free cash flow, which has been very, very stable over the last few years. That speaks to good management, and the company will naturally now benefit immensely from these high prices. This means the gross margin, which is already at 50%, will jump significantly in the coming quarters. Yes, the net profit margin will also rise considerably, and I'm excited. Yes, when it comes to stocks, it's always a relevant topic. The dividend yield on these shares is also quite substantial. We've been getting, or in recent years, we've always received about $3 per share. That's a dividend yield of around 10%. And sure, the payout ratio here right now looks suspiciously high, but I honestly think we can pretty much disregard that. In fact, I'm actually expecting the dividend to be raised in 2026 because so much money is now being earned thanks to these increased freight rates. So Flex LNG here is one of my top stock picks, and I will be taking significant positions in it, just as I've done with the 4 tanker stocks I've already introduced. And the next stock we're going to examine, that's also a very, very interesting one. That's Dynagas. Dynagas isn't quite as large, but they still own 6 ships, and the stock can also be purchased on the exchange, so it is investable. This means here too, it's a stock that you can certainly take a look at, and the chart also looks very, very interesting. We are seeing here from the past few weeks a bit of an emerging upward trend. Yes, we are above the moving averages, and here you can also observe a certain drive, a momentum entering the stock coupled with increased volume. We have the quarterly earnings on the 12th March. At that point, the outlook will become very, very interesting. Yes, the management will certainly express themselves positively, and then I believe the path will be clear towards an interim high. It's not an all-time high here, but it's around $5.60. And here too, I believe that with the persistently high freight rates, we can't rule out new highs towards $10, which is of course very positive. That's why I'm considering building a position here as well. What I find particularly good are also the stable, even increasing free cash flows here. That simply points to good management and high utilization. And here, yes, the gross and net profit margins are all excellent. Yes, if we then look at the valuation in comparison, we see we're even a bit cheaper than Flex LNG. That means the upside potential for the stock is even clearer. There's still more room. So there's more potential in this stock here, which compared to others, to its peer group, has the potential to adjust or catch up in valuation. I think there's still a good amount of return in it here. That means I'll probably take a position here on Monday. I'm recording this video on Sunday. I think it will be released on Tuesday for channel members. It's already accessible directly after recording. So that's why I believe, or rather I'm very, very confident that the coming weeks here could turn out to be extremely lucrative. And it's also a good hedge, you know, to perhaps take some profits from those tech stocks that have performed so well. This involves reallocating funds into tanker stocks, as I've already explained in detail in my last video. So Dynagas is definitely one of the stocks that I'm keeping a very close eye on here. The dividend yield is also very, very interesting. We received a dividend in 2024, suspended in 2025, I believe. I'll have to check the chart again in a moment, but it's 4.66% dividend yield. Looking at this, we can see that dividends have been paid again in recent quarters. I believe TradingView hasn't quite displayed that correctly here on the screen, but we also see here, yes, a reliable dividend payer. And with the free cash flows, I think, or rather with the higher free cash flows that we can expect from the good business due to high freight rates, I believe dividend increases are also possible. And what one also shouldn't forget, that these stocks often also pay out a special dividend, which can then also be very, very lucrative. Capital clean energy carriers, the name itself is already very, very good. From a marketing perspective, they own a total of 14 ships, and 12 of them are of the newest generation, so they already have a very modern fleet. That's also very, very interesting. The stock is still a bit just idling along, so to speak. And not a whole lot is really happening yet, or we're not seeing this upward momentum as we just saw with the other two stocks. But I definitely have the stock on my radar screen. And if I then at the beginning of the week also see movements heading towards an all-time high, I think I will also be getting into this stock. However, in terms of its valuation, we are already sitting a little bit higher. Yes, a price to sales ratio of 3 is also relatively high when compared to the other two stocks. But nevertheless, if the freight rates continue to remain at such high levels, then this particular stock, I believe, will sooner or later start to profit from that. Otherwise, looking at the fundamental key figures, we actually don't see much difference compared to the other two. The only thing is that the free cash flow isn't quite as well developed yet. It's very, very volatile, but that too will turn positive, especially with the good business developments as I expect it to. Yes, I'm curious to see how it develops. Please write in the comments what you think of these 3 stocks. Are you also investing in this sector? Are you in it for the long term, or do you want to stay invested longer? Please share your opinion and then we can discuss it a bit. And then a big thank you for watching, and yeah, until the next time, I wish you much success, all the very best, and another thank you to our channel members. See you next time. See you then. Ciao.